everyone, and happy Monday. Happy Monday. I am Abra Kurt, a certified life and wellness coach and lifestyle designer, and you are watching my series Sparked. Sparked is a weekly lifestyle series and a vibrant online community where the audience actually gets together and connects right here inside the comments of the show. And each week we light the fire around personal wellness, growth, and all things the world around us. Typically, we have a month-long theme, and every week we'll connect around a relevant topic. We'll talk about how it has relevance in our own lives, and I'll share some tips and resources from the perspective of a life coach so that we can take action in our own lives. Tonight, we're doing something a little different. Also, I'm going to ask you as you're hopping on to say hi. Hi, babe. Thank you for being here. Hi, Mama Vicky. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you guys in the comments, and thank you for tuning in to this very special episode of Sparked. Hi, Rose, as I was about to say, which is a tribute to the life, work, and legacy of one of my personal Sheroes, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As you're hopping on, please say hi and maybe share a word or two about what RBG and her life, work, and legacy have meant to you. So maybe share a word or two in the comments about RBG and what her work, life, and legacy have meant to you. And please say hi and let me know you're here and tuning in for this very special episode. So tonight I'm going to share some stories, some of my favorite RBG quotes. I hope you brought your favorite RBG stories and quotes as well. And I'm also going to look ahead and maybe also share some inspiration about how we can carry the spark of her work forward into the future. So stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of storytelling, quote sharing, and RBG love. So if that sounds great to you, please let's all throw up some hearts for RBG, for her memory, for her life, for her tireless work, for fairer, freer society for all of us. Please throw up some hearts for RBG. Hi, George. Hi, Georgie. Who else is here? We have Patrice, Dawn. It's so great to see you all here. Thank you all so much for tuning in to pay tribute to RBG. We are hearing Dawn say so many rights for women. Yes, if you want to share a few words about what RBG's life, work, and legacy have meant to you, please do so in the comments. Dawn says so many rights for women. Absolutely. She was a pioneer for equality, which is the headline that was in the Washington Post on the day after we lost her. A pioneer devoted to equality. And y'all, tireless work on behalf of women, but the precedent she set affects everyone, okay? It's discrimination on the basis of sex, right? As the movie based on one of her famous court cases shows us, it's not just about women, although her work was very much informed by her own life and discrimination that she personally encountered, but it has given us all, men and women alike, a freer and fairer society. Scott says, a lot of hands going up. George, without RBG, there would not be the current women nominees. Yes, exactly. Love RBG, pioneer for women and also men. Yes, Mama Vicky, thank you. Janet, she epitomized resilience in every way. Yes, she did. I'm going to share a little bit of RBG's bio in just a minute. I also want to share that, as always, with Sparked, you'll see links to support our content and community. And this week, as is the case every single week, we pay that generosity forward with a 10% contribution to charity. And I'm so excited about this week's charity, which I will share a little bit later in the show. But I will say, I think it's one that RBG would approve of. So thank you so much for tuning in, for supporting our content and community, and for sharing your own thoughts and feelings about RBG's life, work, and legacy. You know, we have a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings to process, and, you know, a lot of conflicting emotions and feelings to process about losing RBG, but also what that means for the future of not just the judiciary and the judicial branch of our legislature, but for the future of our country and our own personal rights, right? Okay, so let me start with a little bit about RBG, and I'm going to be reading extensively from notes this evening. Normally, I'm speaking from the perspective of my life coaching work, and so a lot of it's up here. Tonight, a lot of it's down here because I want to be accurate and I want to attribute her words correctly, and I want to get all my facts straight. So bear with me, but I would like to start with just a little bit about RBG's life in a nutshell. So, as many of you probably have already read from newspaper clippings and seen in news stories, RBG was born in Brooklyn. She was the second child of a Jewish immigrant father and a first-generation American mother. So, deep roots in the immigrant community. And RBG is just yet another example of the beauty of the immigrant experience. And she's often said, even in her own writing and her own speaking, that she could only accomplish what she has accomplished in America. So she was incredibly grateful for that opportunity herself. She would come to know tragedy at a young age. She lost her sister when she was just a tiny toddler, and her mother passed away from cancer literally on the day before Ruth would graduate from high school. Also in her youth, however, Ruth would earn her reputation as a high-achieving, highly intelligent student. She graduated the top-ranked woman in her class at Cornell University. But before going on to her career in law, she would actually face the kind of discrimination that she would come to work her whole career to combat. At the age of 21, she was demoted in her job at a Social Security office in Oklahoma because she disclosed that she was pregnant. And there were no protections for pregnant women in the workplace at that time. Despite these challenges and struggles, RBG would go on to earn her law degree from Harvard, one of only 9 women in a class of over 500 men at the time. But it was far from the last time she would trailblaze for women. She would become the first tenured law professor at Columbia Law School, the first female tenured law professor at Columbia Law School. She founded the Women's Rights Project at the ACLU and would go on to craft landmark legal cases for women's equality, bringing monumental cases before the Supreme Court itself, where in 1993, upon being nominated by then-President Bill Clinton, she would become only its second ever in history female justice. Though the great dissenter, as she has become known, is gone, her words and legacy live on to inspire us and future generations. Her wisdom has been emblazoned on everything from t-shirts and coffee mugs, although this might be wine. It might be wine. And her image and words have gone on to inspire artists across disciplines. In fact, RBG is with us tonight in image and hopefully in spirit in a couple of different ways. So the incredibly beautiful and powerful original artwork behind me is RBG as reimagined by the DC-based artist Rebecca Williams. And I don't know if you can see from the camera, but the pink paint across the image reads, "Live your truth." And that phrase actually inspired a past episode of Sparked, where we talked about being true to ourselves and what that means and looks like in our life and practice. And it was inspired by this piece of art, which was gifted to me just this past Christmas by my dear friend Donna, who is a fellow sparkler and a continual member of this great community. So Donna, thank you. I'm sure you realized RBG was going to be here in image as well as hopefully in spirit this evening. So if there are other people hopping on tonight, please say hi. Let me know you're here. If you want to share a few words about what RBG's life, work, or legacy have meant to you, or just a few words that come to mind when you think of who she was and what she represented, please share those in the comments and let us know that you're here, and send up a few hearts for RBG. Send up a few more hearts for RBG. So I know we probably have some new viewers tonight because it's a special tribute episode for RBG. But for those of you who are regular attendees, we do something around here called the quote of the week. And it's one of my favorite parts of the show because I get to share some words and wisdom from others who inspire me and who in some ways inspired the theme of the show. So tonight, needless to say, our quote of the week is going to be from none other than RBG herself. But I also, in the show description, when I sent out the invitation, invited everyone to bring your favorite quotes and RBG stories here to the show because I would love for you to share in the comments as well. So before I share my favorite RBG quotes, and I have a list of some others as well, I would love for you guys to get typing in the comments and share your favorite RBG quote or quotes if you have more than one that you brought with you. But I would love to see what everyone's favorite words from RBG are in the comments. Vicky says she remembers when I opened this gift at Christmas. Yeah, Mama Vicky was here with us at Christmas when we opened this piece of art. Scott says, bring on the quote. All right, you guys, I want you to bring on the quotes as well. So while you're typing and sharing in the comments, I am going to share my favorite RBG quote, which I have to say, and there are so many, right? There are so many. It's like, how do you pick just one? It's super hard. That's why I have like a whole list here. But I wanted to narrow it down to the first one that I read that for me really spoke to my heart and to what I hope is my own legacy in the work I'm doing and the community I'm creating here. So my favorite RBG quote is this: I would like to be remembered as someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work to the very best of her ability and to repair tears in society, to make things a little better through the use of whatever ability she has. That's a mouthful. But essentially what RBG is saying here, she wanted to be remembered for the excellence and effort she put into her work, right? Like RBG never half-assed anything, right, you guys? And so she wanted to be remembered as someone who used whatever talent she had to do her work to the very best of her ability. And that's something that I aspire to as well, excellence in my work and being remembered for that. And she also says to help repair tears in society and make things a little better. And that is something I strive for every day. It's part of my personal mission statement to make a positive difference every single day. So this is why I chose this particular quote from RBG, because it's the one that speaks most to my heart and my own reasons for doing the work I do and for having this community, which gave us all the platform to come together tonight to kind of share and reflect on RBG's incredible life and work. So let's see what other people are saying their favorite quotes are. Vicky says, time is on the side of change. I love that. Yes. I love the hopefulness and the optimism behind that. That like, there are so many times, right, when we seem stuck or like it might appear that we're moving backwards in terms of our progress as a country or as individuals in many ways, right? Like we can feel like we have setbacks or challenges that kind of knock us down every now and then. But time is on the side of change. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Vicky. Scott's said, my mother told me to be a lady, and for her, that meant to be your own person, be independent. Yeah, that's a good one, right? Like what we think of, right, when people say like traditional ladies, right, the quiet little like ladies with their hands folded in their laps. No, when RBG shares that quote, she means strong person, your own person, independent. Yes, love that quote. That is what we should all aspire to, whether we're women or not, being our own people, being strong and independent. And Georgie says, her favorite quote is, I've gotten much more satisfaction for the things I have done for which I have not been paid. Yes, I love that. It's the selfless work that we give back to others or to our communities, right? That give us the most joy. We've talked about this in previous episodes of Spark, right? About gratitude and giving back, and how giving to and serving others it lights up centers of the brain. Literally, it's science connected to, our joy and our happiness. And it's all about giving back, and the things that we don't get paid for. So yes, Georgie, thank you. As I said, last week, right? I did the show last week on my birthday, and I said it was the first time in the history of ever since I've been a working person that I voluntarily worked or did my work on my birthday. I would always take a vacation day when I was in, a job that afforded me paid vacation time. And even, the first couple of years that I was doing candles and consulting, I would just always take it off. Like Scott and I would, go away for a long weekend or head to the mountains and go hiking or do something fun. And last week with you guys in this community was the first time I've ever just said, you know what? No, I want to work. I want to do the thing I love doing on my birthday. And so, yeah, it's the satisfaction of feeling like you're giving back and making a difference that matters the most. George says, in every good marriage, it helps sometimes to be a little deaf. Yes, I've read that one a lot lately, and I love that. And I think she meant that too. Even, she has referenced that in terms of her work in the court as well. Like when you hear a comment that you that gut reaction is to say something, right? But she also had a great quote, and I don't know if it was one of the ones that I wrote down here, but something about anger and resentment are emotions that only hold us back. And so sometimes being deaf, being a little bit deaf, both in our home lives and in our work lives, can help us continue to function and get through things, right? And so I can only imagine how that served her over the years in the court. Patricia says, reading is the key that opens doors to many good things in life. Oh, I love this one. Yes, I wrote this one down too because it was about books and reading. Patricia, thank you for sharing this. Reading is the key that opens doors to many good things in life. Reading shaped my dreams, meaning RBG, and more reading helped me make my dreams come true. Reading shaped her dreams, and then more reading helped her make them come true. So that lifelong learning, that continuing to educate ourselves, it can shape what we want to be and who we want to be, and then learning more and more and continuing to read helps us make our dreams come true. And that's so true for me. I'm a constant reader, a constant lifelong learner. Patricia says, as a passionate reader, this resonates so much. Yes, me too, Patricia. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great quote. Donna says, you can disagree without being disagreeable. Yes, I love that. I love that. And I'm going to talk a little bit later in the show about RBG's, kind of famous friendship with her fellow Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. And I'm also going to share a little bit from an op-ed that was published in the Washington Post this week from Scalia's son, talking about the nature of their friendship and their disagreements without being disagreeable. And in fact, they were great friends who loved and respected each other dearly. So yes, Donna, love that. Thank you all for sharing those. Those are so, so great. And, it just speaks so much to the depth and breadth of RBG's work and legacy, the way she lived her life, the way she worked toward excellence, right, every day. Somebody who wants to be remembered for using her talents to the very best of her ability, making things a little better through the use of her abilities, right? One of the many, many reasons I have always loved her is her words are so, so inspiring. Thank you guys all for sharing those. If anybody has more, please share them in the comments. I'm going to read a few more of my favorites that I wrote down as well, that we didn't share in the comments. The first of which being, women belong in all the places where decisions are being made. Women belong in all the places where decisions are being made. And I think that now, kind of in 2020, right, a lot of us take that for granted, right? We can look around and we see women in most positions of leadership and power. You can point to at least one woman who has ascended to, these kinds of CEO level positions in different kinds of industries, or who are making marks in traditionally male dominated fields, or, we've made huge strides in women elected to office. And there's the great quote that RBG also actually shared in her own introduction when she was being confirmed to the court, where she references the Thomas Jefferson, like, I'm not ready for women to be appointed or elected to office. And she's like, thank God we've moved a little beyond that, right? But in RBG's early days, right, women weren't always in the places where decisions were being made. And so that's really powerful. And speaks to, I think, probably an ongoing motivator for her. Her work wasn't done until women were in all the places where decisions were being made. Yes, Donna says another quote, when there are nine. I'm gonna put a pin in that one, Donna, because I have a little story around that quote as well. And that was actually the last quote on my list. And then I'm going to share something special about that. Thank you. Yes. When there are nine, and we will get back to that in a second. I also want to share this quote. So often in life, things that you regard as an impediment turn out to be great good fortune. So often in life, things that you regard as an impediment turn out to be great good fortune. And again, just what hopefulness and resilience, as Janet mentioned, and perseverance, this speaks to in RBG's character, right? Because she faced so much tragedy and sadness and personal discrimination in a really short period of time early in her life, and was already overcoming so much at such an early age. And I'm sure that informed these words, like looking back on it, things that she thought were challenges or obstacles or impediments. You know what? It's the what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. The things you regard as an impediment can sometimes turn out to be great good fortune. And I just love the positivity and hopefulness and the, we can overcome this stuff and it makes us stronger kind of root of those words. Yeah, Patricia loves that one. So true. I also love this one, and I've seen it a lot making the rounds in social media these days because I think it speaks so much to the heart of what we all want to see more of in our leadership and that we're not seeing enough of. And I think this is why I've seen this quote in particular so much on social media lately. And this one is, fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. So yes, disagree without being disagreeable. Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that lifts others up and brings them along instead of alienates them. And I think that's what both sides of so many things get wrong so often, right? Like it's that my way or the highway kind of thing. And we can't fight for the things we care about if we're not also lifting up others and bringing them along with us. So I love, love, love that one. And now I want to get back to what Donna shared about when there are nine. So when there are nine, as Donna shared, is RBG's famous response to being asked the question about when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? When will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? And she said, when there are nine. And she went on to say, what? People are shocked? There have been 9 men and no one raised an eyebrow about that. So why is it when someone says when there are 9 about women, it's like scandalous. It's, it's radical. It's, all of these things that terrify people and, turn them away. And no, when there are 9, which brings me to another story I wanted to share. And actually, another little yummy treat that I wanted to share and talk about for a second because I mentioned about doing the show last week on my birthday, and yesterday I was so blessed to be able to be in the personal company of so many women who I love and adore. We had a safe, socially distanced book club meeting yesterday for the first time since the pandemic hit, and it was delightful and marvelous in all the ways that you would imagine. And of course, these women, being the amazing women they are, did a special little tribute for the September birthdays. There's myself and our friend Marcella both celebrated birthdays within days of each other. And the universe, in its infinite benevolence and wisdom, when I moved to the house I call home now, moved me next door to a woman who is not only a book lover and has become a dear friend, but is also a world-class cupcake baker. And so this cupcake was served at yesterday's book club meeting. And in honor of RBG, this is the When There Are Nine cupcake. And this cupcake was made by my friend Christine Trossel, who is sometimes in our community. I'm not sure if she was going to be able to make it tonight. She's taking a class and moving forward in her career. And so we are like, send up some hearts for Christine and kicking butt in her coursework. Oh, she is in the community tonight. Okay, she said, oh my God, she forgot to send the list of 9 things. So we have play dates in the backyard sometimes because she has 2 little baby puppies, and we put our masks on and I get to go out in the backyard and play with some puppies. And I had mentioned to her that I was going to share the story of the When There Are Nine cupcake. And she said she was going to send me the 9 ingredients so I could share them. And she forgot. So you can share them, Christine, in the comments. And also share your email address for people to order cupcakes if they are interested, or to make inquiries for people who are local to the DMV. Unfortunately, I don't think you're able to ship broadly, but you can arrange pickup or delivery, I think, in the DMV region. So share your information, share the 9 ingredients. The one that meant the most to me is Christine made these cupcakes. It's a spiced pear cake base, and with a candied pear, ginger pear on top, made with pears that she picked from pear trees in my own backyard. And so they're super local, farm to table, right from the backyard. So I wanted to share those. It's a special When There Are Nine little side note, and delicious. I haven't eaten this one yet. We have some leftovers that we can't wait to dig into tonight after the show, Scott and I. But I wanted to share the When There Are Nine cupcake. And Christine says, correct, local only for now. Donna says, yes, they are delicious. So yeah, Christine, share your information. And I'm sorry for the people who aren't local to DC, Maryland, or Virginia. When the restrictions change and y'all come visit, if anybody comes to visit my house, we'll have Christine's cupcakes, because everybody deserves to have this deliciousness in their life at some point. Okay, so that's the When There Are Nine. I also wanted to share the poetry and poignance on a slightly more somber note. The poetry and poignance of RBG passing away on Rosh Hashanah, on the day of the start of the Jewish New Year. And, this once-in-a-century woman's final moment fell on one of the holiest days her faith recognizes. And according to Jewish tradition, a person who dies on Rosh Hashanah is a tzaddik. Tzaddik. And I probably butchered the pronunciation of that a little bit, although I did do an audible look up so I could try to get it right. But I think I still may have been a little off there. But the word means a person of great righteousness. So it's Jewish tradition that someone passing on this high holy day is a person of great righteousness, a spiritual leader. The root of that word actually means justice or righteousness. So there's a beautiful symmetry in the universe and poetry in her passing that should not be overlooked. So I wanted to share that as well. And also, some symbolism in the central prayer of Rosh Hashanah. And for my Jewish friends who are on the show tonight and in the comments, if I get any of this wrong, please correct me. But this is what I gathered from various sources. I always confirm sources at least 3 times before I share anything on the show. So I hope this is all accurate. But the central prayer of Rosh Hashanah tells us that on Rosh Hashanah, a person's fate for the year is written on that day and then sealed 10 days later on Yom Kippur. And it's just really poignant and kind of, I don't know, it's interesting to think about what that means for the next year, and how it could go sort of, one way or another, right? And all of the people, not just those of us who maybe subscribe to that same belief system, right? But how things can happen on one day that kind of write our future, for, months, for the year to come, right? So another just piece of interesting, universal symmetry and poetry and beauty around the particular day of RBG's passing. There's Christine shared, yes, the ingredients. Thank you for sharing those. So amazing, so amazing. All right. So I wanted to share that, and I wanted to, I think it's going to be one of those things for a while where I've heard a lot of people, and we talked yesterday in the group that I met with in person, and where were we, what were we doing, right, when we heard the news? And we think about that as it relates to so many things, right? Like, we just had the anniversary of 9/11. I've heard people talk about it in relationship to, remembering what they were doing when they heard, John Lennon was shot, when Elvis died, right? These huge, larger than life, just that became so personally meaningful figures to us in so many ways. And so I'd love to ask you again to take to the comments and share kind of, what your feelings were, what you were thinking, if you want to process any emotions and kind of share those and get those out, if there are things that you want support from the group around, the feelings around the passing of RBG, let's kind of share those. Like, what were we doing on Friday when we first heard the news? How did we hear the news? Anything that you just kind of want to share about that night, or any ways that you're working through maybe processing. Donna just shared a playlist that she made on Saturday inspired by RBG and the world today. Donna, thank you for sharing that. It's an amazing playlist, y'all, and it's on Amazon Music. So for those of us who have Amazon Prime, I think we can all access that. So yeah, Donna, thank you for that. It's a great way, right, to process emotions and feelings and, kind of think of the music that we can relate to in times like this. Scott said he was riding in the car with his mom when he heard on the radio John Lennon died. Yeah, it's those kind of iconic moments, right, that are just like they're stamped on our memory forever, right? It's like Proust's Madeleine. We can all remember sights or sounds or smells or tastes, right, that go along with these like momentous occasions in our lives. And for me, for Scott and I both, right, we were doing our usual Friday night thing, which is playing Scrabble before we make dinner. And we use the official Scrabble dictionary app for word challenges and things like that. So we were allowed to have our phones beside us, but the kind of rule is like you don't really check your phone or whatever. But the alert popped up on my phone while we were playing Scrabble on Friday that RBG passed. And I went totally silent, and I think I maybe said like, oh my God. And it was just like the shock, and it was Scott's turn at Scrabble, and so he was focused on his letters and the board, and he kind of looked up at me. He's like, what? He's like, are you okay? Like, what happened? And I didn't even get the words out of my mouth, and I just burst into tears. I literally just started crying, like tears streaming down my face, crying at the kitchen table, playing Scrabble, the moment I saw the news. And it was, I will be honest, that emotion was rolled up in a whole bunch of different things. It was the grief of losing this incredible woman whose whole life was dedicated to just trying to make things better, for other women and freer, and lifting up all people and making things just more equal and fair and equitable for everyone, right? There's real grief in that, right? And she was a Shero and a role model and all the things that like so many of us aspire to in all the different ways that we talked about how her words and work and life resonate with us, right? And the just the weight of that loss and also kind of the shock, right? So for me it was shock because she's battled successfully, through cancer treatments and surgeries, multiple times and made it through brilliantly and resiliently and was back on the bench and doing her work and like so many things that she would just bounce right back from and be back at work like the next day or after the recess of the Supreme Court and all the things. And, even though we had known recently she'd had some more treatments, we all, I think, just kind of lived with this, hopeful, false sense of security that she would continue to just, hang in there. And so there was shock in the grief for me as well. And then, of course, I'll be perfectly honest, like fear for the future. What does this mean in terms of filling the seat that she has left vacant in her passing? And what does that mean for the future of, our country and its laws writ large and writ small, on a real personal individual level? What does that mean for the future, right? And so it was wrapped up in all those things. Georgie said she was reading her devotional when it popped up on her phone. That's really poignant, Georgie. Yeah, do you remember? If you remember what verse or what kind of passage you were reading, I would love to hear that. If you remember, if you're able to share that with us. Donna says, World on Fire. Oh, this is the playlist. Yes, for the people who don't have Amazon Music, Donna also shared the playlist. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. So if anybody else, wants to share like what you were doing or how you felt or how you're feeling now, we've started to get the names of potential nominees for the seat, right? And, there's, it could happen, or, some senators could come on board and say, you know what, we're not going to let this happen. It's, an election year in 2016. This was not allowed to happen. And so, the precedent was set then. For this kind of election year, put the pause on, let the next president fill a seat. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the Senate. But there is action to be taken. There's work to be done if we want to see RBG's dying wish was to not be replaced until the next president is installed. So we can all play a role in taking action on making that happen. George says, watchful and waiting. Yes, yeah, I think that sums it up in a very diplomatic way, George. We're all watching and waiting. And I think when the time comes, when a nominee is announced, I think there will probably be a lot of action taking as well. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for sharing. And if anybody else wants to share sort of what you were doing or how you're feeling or, kind of what your current state is around the uncertainty, please share. That being said, her life was all about inspiring action and progress, right? And so I look at just this endless list, right? And there's more that we could have a whole month-long mini series about RBG, right? And still not be able to do justice to all of her work and her legacy and her life and her words. I mean, there was an entire movie devoted to like one court case and her early years. So there's a lot more that could be discussed than we have time for in a 1 hour show. But when we look over that long list, right, all at once, it's intimidating, it's formidable, right? But it's also, God, it's so inspiring when you think of what this small in stature and huge in accomplishment and heart and resilience and achievement woman was able to do with her life and work, and the challenges that she was able to overcome to do those things and accomplish those things. And I wanted to share some stories, some of my favorite stories from RBG's life and work. If you guys have others that, snippets of things that you picked up from books or the movie or the documentary, please share those in the comments. While you're typing, I want to share a couple of my favorites. And this was something that actually was just in the Washington Post. I'm going to start with this because one of the things I love about RBG, and it's the things that, those of us who live close to DC and, live, work, and play in the DC area, sometimes you'll run into people like RBG, right, at the theater or, at other events, or she'll speak at an event, right? And I know RBG spoke at the National Book Festival just last year in Washington, D.C., and some of our friends who are sometimes here, I don't know if Jane is here tonight, but Jane, our friend Jane, saw her speak live last year at the National Book Festival. Donna and I, this isn't RBG, but Donna and I were at the Kennedy Center to see Linda Carter, who played Wonder Woman. Speaking of amazing women, right, Wonder Woman. Linda Carter is a singer and a performer, and she was giving a concert at the Kennedy Center. And we ended up sitting in the row in front of Nancy Pelosi several years ago. So you run into people like this, at the theater, wherever. In restaurants, you'll see these figures, right? And so in the Washington Post today, there was a story about RBG's love of the theater. And she was a frequent attendee of both theatrical performances in the DC region and the opera at the Kennedy Center. It's one of the great passions she shared with her dear friend and fellow Justice Scalia, their love of opera. And I found the story just so incredibly charming. So it's about her, love and patronage of the theater in DC. And there was a performance at the Signature Theater that she attended, and as props in the performance of their musical roadshow, they had like fake money made, right? And it's like, like Monopoly money or whatever, and it's the kind of thing that, sometimes you'll see like in plays and musicals, they'll throw, sheets of paper or, money or whatever, right, like into the audience. And they had $10 bills made, and the face on the $10 bill was RBG. And so she wrote a thank you note. They gave her commemorative $10 bills after the performance that night. And she hand wrote a personal note to the director of the Signature Theater. And this was in 2016. And she says, "Dear Christine, please tell the prop shop crew the $10 bills were the highlights of today. I will give one to my daughter, one to my son, and the third for me, and frame the third for me. With appreciation, RBG." And she actually signed her notes RBG with her initials. And the beauty of this kind of thing is, right, like it sounds like something like maybe somebody would just say like, oh, they're writing a thank you. Yeah, I'll frame that third one for myself, and something to make the theater, director feel good. But does it really happen, right? Do they value it that much? Well, then there's, the documentary filmed, and there are other, interviews and news shows that have been filmed and taken place in RBG's apartment at the Watergate building in DC. And lo and behold, in one of the backgrounds in an interview with RBG is a framed $10 bill with her face on it from the Signature Theater. So she did indeed keep the third one for herself and frame it. And I just thought that was a really lovely story and way that her life, RBG, one of the things I love about her is she showed us that you can have this incredibly meaningful career and you can focus on family and you can pursue your passions, right? She kind of lived this really full life with this beautiful family, this beautiful marriage, her marriage to Marty, their, affection and kind of playfulness together is legendary, right? And she was still carved out space to pursue her passions, go to the theater, frame $10 bills and handwrite thank you notes. And so I just love, love, love that story about RBG. So we're sharing some stories in the comments. Donna said she was sitting down to relax after a long week of work, getting ready to finish book club book when she saw a mutual friend's post on Facebook. And so a lot of us probably read the news, on social media and had that same shock and reaction. Vicky said she could be a diminutive lady wearing white lace gloves and tenacious at the same time. Yeah. She's small, carried a big stick, right? Georgie says, be still and listen. The quiet speaks the loudest. This was the part that she was reading when she read the news. I love that. Georgie, thank you for sharing that. That's really meaningful. And I'm going to carry those words with me. It's meaningful to know that that's what you were reading when you heard the news. And Donna says, RBG was on Hamilton's bill. Yeah, they put RBG on the 10. So she was the $10 founding mother, right? On the $10 bill. So one of those great stories about RBG. One of my other favorites is, and for those of you who looked closely at the coffee mug I shared earlier, one of my other favorites is how, she ended up being known as the notorious RBG and just really came to embrace it and loved it. And, she didn't get it at first. She shares the story I didn't know what that meant. And so, I think one of her clerks had to say it's the notorious B.I.G., the rapper. And she'd be like, who was that? And so they told her a little bit about him. And she's like, that's, we're both New York City, And so she was like, she got a kick out of, kind of having this comparison, right? The notorious RBG to the rapper, the notorious B.I.G. And just another way that she was whimsical and had a great sense of humor and, loved actually looking at, there's so much art that was created with that image, right? So it's the crown and then the notorious RBG. And she loved, she shared and wrote and spoke about seeing all of that different art with sort of that moniker, right? The notorious RBG. And so just another really, really great, fun story about her that I wanted to share because I think, a lot of us probably know that nickname, but maybe some of us don't and don't know what the connection is. And there's also, I have this great book that was written that also was inspired by that, the notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And there's a great section in this of some of the art. And I just want to share this page. So it's so much of the art that's just been inspired by her imagery and her words. That's so fun. And she always loved kind of looking at things like that. And then also, she's one of the most popular, y'all, Halloween is coming. She's one of the most popular Halloween costumes over the past several years across all ages, right? Across all ages. There's baby RBGs. So just some lighthearted tribute stories to RBG. I also wanted to share maybe some of us aren't super familiar about all of the court cases that she had a really strong voice in. And so I wanted to pay a little bit of tribute here tonight to her legal legacy as well and share some Supreme Court cases that she played a huge role in. Starting with the one that inspired the movie On the Basis of Sex, starring Felicity Jones as RBG, right? And so, as the founder of the Women's Law Project at the ACLU, she crafted and argued numerous cases in front of the Supreme Court before being nominated to the bench herself. And the first is Moritz versus the Commissioner of Internal Revenue. And this is the case that is depicted in the drama film On the Basis of Sex. It's a 1972 boring old tax law case, you guys, that of course RBG turns into precedent-setting equality legislation that impacts both men and women because the defendant in the case, or the plaintiff in the case was a man. So the original argument, and this was a tax case because he was taking care of his infirmed mother and wanted to claim a tax credit. She lived with him. He was 100% responsible for her care, and he was not able to work as a result of this care he was providing. Wanted to take a tax credit for it, and it turned into the Supreme Court case, right? And RBG, it was actually her husband's case because he was a tax lawyer, but she's like, no, there's more. Like, there's more here than just tax law. Like, this is gender discrimination. Because the way the laws were written, it was only women who were mothers or widowers. So you could either be a parent or a widowed spouse who could claim a tax credit for having to caregive in this way in lieu of working. But it didn't apply to men, and they wouldn't let him take the tax credit for it. So she made this about gender discrimination, took it to the Supreme Court, and she won. She won a gender discrimination suit on behalf of a man that set legal precedent that would make society freer, fairer, and more equitable for all of us, you guys. Just what a legend, right? And what an intellect to look at a tax case and see discrimination that would change the precedent for our country. So much love. Oh, and my necklace is also kind of inspired by the RBG collar. I don't have any like white lacy things, but I had this big chunky necklace. And so I'm wearing that in honor of RBG tonight. Donna says part of her legal genius was looking for cases where men suffered, to fight for equal rights because people would be more likely, right, to rule on the side of a man who was facing gender discrimination. But then the law would also apply to women as well. So other really impactful cases, I want to mention a couple where she was the majority opinion. One of her most famous is the U.S. v. Virginia, which is the state of Virginia, here in my home state where I live, you guys, from 96, because it was the Virginia Military Institute that still in 96 said it was okay to discriminate against women and not let them enroll at VMI, the Virginia Military Institute. They were like, oh, we have this program for women at this other school. It's separate but equal, right? And the court said, well, no, it's not. Like, we kind of decided the whole separate but equal thing, years ago. And their whole argument was based around, well, the average woman isn't able to meet the rigorous demands of this kind of institution. And the winning argument was, well, we shouldn't hold all women to the standard of the average, but what about the exceptional few who can meet the standard and, maybe not only meet it, but exceed it. And so they won the case. VMI ended up admitting women, And legal precedent was changed at VMI and in the state of Virginia, also setting precedent for other similar cases down the road. She was also majority opinion on Obergefell v. Hodges from 2015. And if the plaintiff defendant name of that case doesn't ring a bell, for some of us, that is the case, you guys, that decided that love is love and marriage equality was the law of the land. And RBG was, again, the majority opinion, who formed some brilliant arguments during the debate on the issue from the bench. And one of her arguments was, they said, marriage has always been a relationship between a dominant man and a subordinate woman. And she cited a case that was decided in 1982. It was known as Louisiana's Head and Master Rule. Can you imagine? This is the 80s, you guys, the 80s. I was 11 at this time. And there's still these laws on the books about the man being the head of the household and the woman being subordinate to him. And they struck that down, took till the 80s, but they struck it down and said, that's not only what marriage is. And she said, so we've allowed marriage, we've allowed the definition of marriage to evolve over time. So should we not continue to allow it to evolve? And then they came back with an argument about, well, the point of marriage is procreation and childbearing, right? Perpetuating the population. And RBG's response was brilliant. And she said, so by that argument, should we not allow a heterosexual, so a man and woman couple who are 70 years old, to get married if they want to, because they can't have children any longer at that age? So the way her mind worked is just so inspiring to me. Ultimately, the court ruled 5-4 in favor of love is love and marriage equality being the law of the land. Now, she also became known as the Great Dissenter. So she is way more famous probably for the cases where she would write I dissent than, for writing some majority opinions. But one of the big cases was Lilly Ledbetter v. the Goodyear Tire Company, where she sued about pay discrimination, right? And she ended up losing the case. Lilly Ledbetter ended up losing the case because they said she didn't file her complaint within the statute of limitations for things like that. Like her time ran out to file a complaint of that nature against her former employer, the Goodyear Tire Company. And RBG's argument was, well, she couldn't have filed it in that time frame because she didn't even know she was being discriminated against until X time, which fell outside of that time frame. So they should have allowed the case to go forward. They didn't. Lilly Ledbetter lost her case at the Supreme Court. Justice Ginsburg wrote the dissenting opinion. However, after the case was lost in the courts, she continued to press Congress because this is just such a vital, important issue, and eventually convinced them to write legislation so that when President Obama took office in 2009, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was the first bill he signed into law. And it was based on the Supreme Court case that was lost, but for which RBG wrote the dissenting opinion. She also wrote the dissenting opinion in Shelby County versus Holder. And you guys, this is the case that gutted the Voting Rights Act, right? And it took away this idea of pre-clearance for states that had a history of trying to squash voting rights for people. And so there were particular states like Alabama, Texas, and Arizona that were notorious for putting, really onerous processes into place to make it harder for people to vote. So they could, keep voting to the population where they wanted to keep it. And they instituted a law known as preclearance, where if they made any changes to their voting requirements, it actually had to be approved by a judicial panel. And so it seemed fair, right? Like, well, if these places want to make more changes and make it harder for people, it's going to have to go to a higher place to be approved. And so Alabama, Shelby County, Alabama, brought a court case to the Supreme Court in 2013 that challenged preclearance on the grounds that this is like the modern day and age, you guys. Like, we shouldn't be held to this standard that, like, was applicable, decades ago, like back during, Jim Crow era of, the 50s and 60s, right? Like, this is 2013. Preclearance doesn't apply anymore. And so they won their case in the Supreme Court, and they threw out preclearance, gutted the Voting Rights Act. And in the years since that law was overturned, the states previously covered by preclearance have enacted numerous laws making it more difficult to vote in those states. The Atlantic wrote an article that quotes the writer Van Newkirk saying, voting became rapidly more difficult after the Shelby County decision, particularly for the poor and elderly Blacks and Latinos. So they knew what they were doing. It wasn't about being too modern and not needing preclearance anymore. It was about getting rid of it and being able to make it harder for the people that they didn't want to have voting in the first place. Which leads me to, we are coming up on our hour, you guys. I promised I would talk about the charity, and the charity is inspired by Shelby County versus Holder. Christine says, along those lines, her project for her current policy class is the disproportionate disenfranchisement of minorities in the restoration of voting rights for convicted felons. Yes, and that is why, Christine, we are like, let's send up some hearts for Christine's work, you guys. Lots of hearts for Christine's work on policy to re-enfranchise voters. You guys, there are so many collateral consequences of being convicted of crimes, and people lose their voting rights, and it disproportionately happens in minority communities. And so hearts for Christine's work, you guys. Kick butt. Kick butt, girl. Vicky says RBG fought serious battles, but also had a sense of humor. She got a chuckle after seeing SNL's Nancy McKinnon's portrayal of her. Yeah, she did. Like, that's what she had a great sense of humor, right? She loved the whimsical things. She loved, the SNL skits and the notorious RBG images. She had a real sense of humor for that kind of stuff. So tonight's charity, you guys, is about Shelby County versus Holder. It's about voting. This is a consequential election year like none I feel we've ever known. And I know we all said that back in 2016, but it's even more so right now in 2020. And so the 10% charity of all the support that comes in tonight is for vote.org. Vote.org, you guys. And it is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan, you guys. So for everybody that's like, oh, this is just about like whatever. No, it's nonpartisan, you guys. This is about enfranchising people. It doesn't matter how people vote. It doesn't matter what party they are members of. Vote.org is about making sure people's constitutional right to exercise their vote is not restricted illegally. Okay, so vote.org is the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan voter registration and get out the vote technology platform in the United States. Vote.org uses technology to simplify political engagement, increase voter turnout, just voter turnout across the board, and strengthen American democracy. It has registered more than 4.5 million new voters, verified 10.5 million voters registration status, and has helped over 39 million users of their website by providing voter registration links and deadlines, polling location details, and other essential voting information for each state. So you guys, everyone, thank you so much who has shared your generosity with us tonight to support our content, to support this amazing community. 10% of everything we take in from tonight through this week until next week's show is going to go to vote.org to help ensure that we are increasing voter turnout. We are maximizing voter participation, and we are providing people with the factual information they need to exercise their right to vote. So thank you. I wanted to share some resources too. Some RBG resources for anyone who wants to do any additional reading. I already shared the notorious RBG book. There is the incredible My Own Words by RBG herself. Absolutely inspiring, personally written sort of autobiography, excerpts from her cases, excerpts from her writing. Beautiful, beautiful book. And then also kind of one of the definitive biographies of RBG that I have in my collection, Ruth Bader Ginsburg by Jane Sharon DeHart. So RBG biography that I wanted to share, as well as the In Her Own Words book that is by RBG herself. There's also the movie I've been talking about throughout the evening, On the Basis of Sex, which is a drama starring Felicity Jones as Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That film is available on Showtime and on the Amazon Prime Video platform. And then, of course, there's also the Academy Award nominated documentary RBG, which is absolutely phenomenal. Has one of the songs from Donna's playlist in the documentary. And RBG, the documentary, is available on Hulu for Hulu subscribers. You can watch for free, or also on the Amazon Prime Video platform for rent or purchase. So those are the resources I wanted to share. Also, for anyone who's interested in getting their own RBG action figure, because who doesn't want an RBG action figure, right? I mean, look at her. She's amazing. The website is factory.com, and it's shop, shop.factory, FCTRY, so it's not the whole word factory, it's just FCTRY.com, or you can just Google RBG action figure. It takes you to their website. They have other pop culture, political action figures as well. RBG was, I think, one of their, maybe the original Kickstarter project that got their whole business started, and she raised like ridiculous amounts of money, and she lives on as an action figure. So you guys, thank you so much for sharing, for bringing your own quotes and stories and all of your feelings, and sharing where you were and what you were doing on Friday when we heard the news, being here to take part in this tribute to RBG. This has meant so much to me. She's one of my personal Sheroes. She will always hang on our family room wall. Her action figure is in my office and looks over my shoulder from my bookshelf every single day. Thank you for being here for this tribute. Thank you all so much for sharing all the things that you shared. We will be back here next week for our regularly scheduled Sparked episode, which will be the discussion of my September book selection, which is Everything is Figureoutable by Marie Forleo, which is one of my mantras and mottos in life. So that will be the topic next week. We will be discussing some takeaways and great lessons from that book. I know some of you are reading along with me this month. You don't have to. You can still come here, tune in, and get some great takeaway lessons from the book Everything is Figureoutable. Thank you guys so much for being here. It means so much to me that you shared in my tribute to RBG. I know she was a role model and a hero to so many of us. Thank you. Love you guys. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And I will see you next week back here at the same time for another episode of Sparked. Good night.